All right, welcome. Today, we're diving into the story of what might be the most powerful financial tool ever invented. Seriously, it's a tool that has built fortunes, funded dreams, and, yeah, when it's misused, it can bring everything crashing down. This is the story of financial leverage. You've probably heard this quote before. Over 2,000 years ago, the great mathematician Archimedes got it. He understood physics. He understood multiplication. He knew that with the right tool, a single person's effort could be amplified to do the impossible. Well, fast forward to today, and that same principle isn't just about moving big rocks. It's about moving capital, building wealth, and fundamentally changing your financial story.
And that right there, that's the big idea we're digging into. What if the real secret isn't just about how much you make, but how much you can lift with what you have? Financial leverage is that tool. It's the mechanism that multiplies your financial force, letting you control assets that are way, way bigger than your savings account. It's the difference between slowly saving your way to wealth and actually investing your way there.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to cover the basics, the physics of finance. Then, we'll see how this plays out in the real world with things like buying a house, the leveraged American dream. We'll also talk about student loans, leveraging your future self. Then, crucially, we have to look at the dark side of debt, when things go wrong. And finally, we'll pull it all together with mastering your financial fulcrum, the rules for using this thing wisely.
All right, first up, the physics of finance. Before we get into all the big real-world stories, we just have to understand the simple, powerful math that makes this whole thing tick. So what is leverage, really? At its heart, it's just using borrowed money to invest. You'll often hear it called OPM, which stands for other people's money. The whole point is to earn a return on that investment that's higher than the interest you're paying on the loan. When that works, it's like pouring gasoline on a fire. It just accelerates everything. To really see this in action, let's imagine two people. Over here, we've got prudent Paul. He's playing it safe. He uses $100,000 of his own cash to buy an asset. Simple enough. But then you've got leveraged Laura. She's buying the exact same $100,000 asset, but she only puts down $20,000 of her own money. She borrows the other $80,000.
Okay, now, let's say the asset goes up in value by 10%. That's a $10,000 gain. For Paul, that's a 10% return on his $100,000 investment. Not bad, right? But for Laura, that same $10,000 gain is measured against her investment of just $20,000. That is a 50% return. She made 5 times more than Paul on the exact same asset. This right here is the magic, the seductive power of leverage.
But, and this is the part you can never, ever forget, the lever magnifies force in both directions. So what if the asset drops by 10%? Paul loses $10,000, which is 10% of his investment. But Laura? She loses that same $10,000, but it's against her small $20,000 stake. That's a devastating 50% loss. She's wiped out half of her initial investment. The same tool that created those incredible gains can create absolutely crushing loss.
So, moving on from the theory, let's talk about how this powerful double-edged sword isn't just for Wall Street traders. It's actually something millions of us use, sometimes without even thinking about it. It is baked right into the American dream.
And this is it. This is the biggest and most common leverage story in America. For generations, the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage has been the main vehicle for building middle-class wealth. It lets an ordinary person control a huge and hopefully appreciating asset, their home, with a pretty small down payment. It's not always that houses appreciate faster than stocks. It's that the investment in a house is so incredibly leveraged.
Now, what's really interesting is how this story has shifted recently. In an era of higher interest rates, like we see here for 2026, the math gets a lot trickier. Owning that $400,000 home might cost you $3,000 a month, but renting a similar place could be closer to $2,300. Because so much of that mortgage payment is going to interest, the home has to appreciate by more than 5 or 6% a year just for the owner to break even. All of a sudden, renting and investing that $80,000 down payment somewhere else becomes a really competitive financial choice. The lever just has a lot more friction these days.
Okay, so the next big chapter in a lot of people's financial lives involves leveraging something different. Not a house, but a personal asset, your own future potential. And this brings us right to the student loan debate.
And this chart really shows you exactly what you're buying with that student loan debt. A student loan is, fundamentally, a bet on your future self. And the data shows that, historically, that bet has paid off big time. You can see a college grad in 2025 earns way more per week than a high school grad. And over an entire career, that gap becomes massive.
But here's where the story gets more complicated. While that upside is still very real, the return on that investment is getting squeezed. The extra pay you get for a degree hasn't really grown much since the year 2000. But tuition costs? They've just kept soaring. Plus, the value of a degree depends hugely on what you major in. A computer science degree can probably support a lot more debt than, say, a communications degree. It just means that good debt isn't an automatic label anymore. It's a very personal calculation you have to make.
So far, we've talked about using leverage to invest in a house, in yourself. But what happens when we use that same powerful tool just to consume, to buy stuff? Now we have to look at the cautionary tales, the stories of when the lever works against you and absolutely crushes you.
This is a perfect and painful example of bad leverage. A car is not an investment. It's a depreciating asset. It starts losing value the second you drive it off the lot. But these super long-term loans make really expensive cars seem affordable on a monthly basis. And the result? By 2025, more than a quarter of people trading in their cars owed more on the loan than the car was even worth. They were upside down.
And this right here shows the horrible cycle it creates. That negative equity, that debt which averaged almost $7,000, it doesn't just disappear. It gets rolled into the loan for the next car. So now you're paying interest on your brand new car, plus you're paying interest on the ghost of your old car. It is a debt trap, and it's incredibly hard to climb out of.
But let's be honest, the most dangerous form of consumer leverage has to be credit card debt. And to really understand just how dangerous it is, there's a quick mental shortcut you can use called the Rule of 72. It's a simple way to estimate how fast your debt will double. All you do is divide the number 72 by the interest rate. With the average credit card rate hanging around 24%, the math is, well, it's terrifying. 72 divided by 24 is 3. That means any balance you carry on that card can double in just 3 years if you're not paying it down. This isn't just debt, it's a full-blown financial emergency, with the lever compounding against you at a terrifying speed.
Okay, so let's get to our final section. After seeing all the power and all the peril, how do we actually master this tool? How do we make sure we're the ones in control of the lever and not the other way around? Let's talk about some rules. To use that big housing lever safely, a really good guideline is the 28-36 rule. Lenders use this to figure out risk, and you should too. It's really simple. Try to keep your total housing costs under 28% of your gross monthly income, and then keep your total debt payments, your mortgage, car loans, student loans, all of it, under 36%. Think of it as building a margin of safety into your life, a buffer for when things get tough.
And for cars, to avoid that whole upside-down trap, a great rule of thumb is 24-10. Put at least 20% down. That helps you stay ahead of depreciation. Finance for no more than 4 years, so you can actually own the car before it becomes a money pit for repairs. And try to keep your total transportation costs under 10% of your income. These rules basically just align the loan with the reality of the asset.
Now, if you're already in a tough spot with debt, there are 2 main strategies for getting out. The avalanche method is for the math nerds. You attack the debt with the highest interest rate first. It saves you the most money over time. Then there's the snowball method. This one's all about psychology. You pay off the smallest balance first to get a quick win, which builds momentum. Honestly, they both work. The best one is the one you'll actually stick with.
Because in the end, that's really what this all boils down to. Financial leverage itself isn't good or bad. It's just a tool. It's a multiplier of your own decisions. It can be used to write a story of security, of financial freedom, of generational wealth, or it can write a tragedy of debt and foreclosure. The lever is there for all of us. The choice of where to place it and which way to push is entirely yours.